The primary role of marketing is to create value, customer, consumer value, and thereby firm value. The world is constantly evolving, more so now, and so are consumers. Organizations and marketeers need to evolve to keep pace. Nurturing leadership is a key aspect of evolving marketeers. A more holistic and consumer-centric approach is the key to success. And now, to talk about the same, I'm humbled to welcome Mr. Rajesh Ramakrishnan, MMA India Board Member, Managing Director, Perfetti Van Mel India, to talk about the same.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, MMA, for having me here. And it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be with all of you here. You know, I had done an article for the annual report, which was around building winning marketing organizations. And what I thought I'd do today in the next 15 minutes or so is to pick up one aspect of it, which is around holistic marketing, and speak about it in terms of the various aspects of holistic marketing. So if you really look at it, there are multiple dimensions to holistic marketing. One, of course, is the fact that marketing as a concept is not confined or limited to just the marketing function. It actually transcends across the various departments in the organization, and it is therefore very important to look at it from that holistic perspective. The second part of it is that the classical marketing, the way we understand it, there was a lot of focus around communication and advertising. But now marketing has actually grown much beyond that. It includes new product development, deep consumer understanding of the social media, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, marketing has truly become holistic. The third part of it, which in my view is very often underrated, is marketeers themselves need to be far more holistic in their perspective. If you really look at it, most of the general managers of various companies, at least in the consumer marketing space, have been marketeers before. And therefore, marketeers need to rise above their functional outlook and really look at it as seeing, how can I truly understand the various aspects of the business? How can I get a very good commercial acumen and appreciation of operations, and therefore become a true general manager in that sense? So if you really look at it in that perspective, marketing has multiple dimensions of how it could be holistic. Before we move into how can we be good at holistic marketing, let us just look at what is the key reason for marketing to exist as a function. I think ultimately it's about creating value. And when we say value, there are two aspects to that value. One value is, how do we create value for consumers and customers? Because that's the reason why we exist. So having a deep understanding of consumers, not only understanding their articulated needs, but actually understanding their unarticulated needs, and therefore being able to add value to them in terms of delivering against their functional and emotional needs, and actually in many cases, actually contributing to building a deeper sense of purpose for themselves, which is reflected in the usage of the brands. So that becomes super, super critical. As a consequence, what also happens is marketeers help in building value for the organization or for the firm. And therefore, these two things become very critical. I will now pause here for a minute to just deep dive into how the world today looks like. Of course, we all know it's a VUCA world, but the one thing that COVID has taught us is it's VUCA world many times over. There is a serious amount of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the world. And one thing which is sure is the world is constantly evolving. And in that, if earlier situational adaptability was important, I think now what is becoming important is situational agility, which is really our ability to understand the situation, adapt ourselves to the situation, but with an element of speed involved in it. And that is where situational agility becomes very, very critical. So here again, as organizations evolve, we need to understand why they need to evolve. And that is where understanding of what is happening with consumers is very important. And what I'm sharing in this slide is not rocket science. We are all aware of it, but I think it's important to just pause for a minute and take stock of that. One, consumers are becoming more and more discerning and demanding. The equation of value, the way they see it, is going up. Today, knowledge is no longer power. knowledge has been completely democratized. Everybody's got the same amount of information. And in fact, if you think about it, when we buy a new product or a service or go for a new experience, the first thing we do is not go into the company website and check it, but we actually speak to our friends who have been through that experience or who own that product, right? To understand what do people have to say about it. So word of mouth becomes super critical, and consumers are increasingly becoming demanding and discerning. Earlier, brands used to talk to consumers and saying, hey, this is what we can do for you. Today, it is all about a two-way communication where the brands are keen to understand and learn from consumers as to what they are looking for and what they have to say about their products and services. Sustainability, I mean, we call it a buzzword these days, but there's a lot of focus behind sustainability in the sense that as a consumer, I'm fairly keen on being mindful about the kind of carbon footprint I put out there in the market. I'm also very mindful of the usage of plastic, for example, in the products that I consume, right? And therefore, in that sense, there is a lot more interest and attention around sustainability. And last but not the least, there is a deep sense of purpose that is coming up in consumers. And it's very heartening to see this, especially in the youngsters of today. So they have a deep sense of purpose in terms of being committed to causes and feeling strongly about causes around them. And in a sense, they like to use brands which reflect that reality. So it would be very good for brands to, again, have a deep sense of purpose, which will make the consumers to associate with them much more strongly. Now, having said that, how do we see organizations needing to evolve as we go forward? One, of course, there needs to be a strong sense of consumer centricity. And this is not limited just to marketing. It has to transcend across various functions. And that also involves a strong element of active social listening. And when the consumers are being felt that they are being heard, I think that's when the true connection happens with the organization. And therefore, in that sense, brand building is not just the responsibility of marketing, but of every other function as well. And if you really think about it and take an example, say you're buying an automobile, yeah, the multiple touch points where we connect with the brand or the product makes a significant difference in the way we evaluate it. Right from when we go to the showroom and what kind of experience we have there, to the after sales service that we get when something goes wrong. So therefore, that responsibility of building brands actually rests with every function. And it is very, very important that organizations make that effort to build that consumer centricity across all functions. And if there is a strong element of caring for the world, that's like the icing on the cake. And actually, a lot of organizations, thanks to growing sense of importance of CSR, are indeed being very, very caring and mindful of the environment in terms of either taking up projects on water, the way the energy consumption is, and so on and so forth. But this, again, I believe, is going to be a very, very important thing as we go forward. And this is where I'd like to just spend a little bit of time. Now, we spoke about it in terms of how a lot of companies, the general managers, the managing directors are actually marketeers, right? And it's no surprise that is the case because marketeers start developing a holistic view of the organization, not only in terms of deep consumer understanding, but also a strong commercial acumen and a good appreciation of the operational nitty-gritties of the processes. And therefore, from that perspective, marketeers would do well by building themselves as very strong holistic managers so that they actually start operating as mini general managers from a very early stage. The second aspect of it is around building a deeper brand purpose. I mean, if you look at iconic brands like Nike or Red Bull, what connects consumers to these is, of course, apart from the products that they put out, is also the deep sense of purpose that they have. And more and more we are seeing consumers having that sense of purpose within them, and they like to use brands which reflect that sense of purpose as well. The third aspect around it, and again, something which sometimes gets under leveraged, is how do marketeers proactively manage the ecosystem? Today, if you look at it, one critical part of it is how do I get the diverse bunch of cross-functional teams involved upstream rather than downstream? Now, the conversations might be that much more intense upstream, But if you're able to resolve a lot of the issues at an upstream level, then the execution of it downstream becomes that much more easier. The second aspect to it is we have several agency partners, creative partners, media partners, digital partners, and PR partners. How are we able to get this ecosystem together and act truly as partners where we have a win-win equation with these different partners so that the quality of the output that we get is that much significantly stronger? The third aspect to it is networking. And that is again something which gets underestimated. Networking, not just within the organization, because today a lot of organization is about being a matrix organization. So how do we strongly network within the organization? But equally important, how do we network outside of the organization? And I think that's where forums like this, the MMA, what we do, and many other forums come into play, where it is not only about learning new things, but it is also networking and really building strong relationships. And the fourth piece is the value of pre-alignment. Very often, again, I've seen marketeers in meetings where we come in for the first time and share a point of view. And once people start taking positions to that point of view, it becomes very difficult to dislodge that. So one of the important things is have that pre-alignment conversations with the key stakeholders in a timely manner so that we are able to progress on what we need to take forward as our agenda. So these are a few ways in which marketeers could proactively manage the ecosystem. Think more upstream rather than downstream, work strongly and treat partners as true partners, network very well internally and externally, and really understand the value of pre-alignment. Move on to the next piece, which is really around growth mindset. And again, here, there are two kinds of mindsets, which we all know about. There's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the growth mindset is really about saying, how can I make this happen? Because if you really look at it, everybody here is of a certain IQ. We all are here because of the credentials and the experience that we have. What makes us stand out is the EQ and also the passion and the energy that we bring to our work. So growth mindset is a very critical aspect of it, which is really about saying, if we are faced with a situation, the question that we need to have is, how do I make it happen? Because if I ask a question, can I make it happen? There are two possible answers. There is a yes, and there is also a no. But how to make it happen is really about saying, guys, let's get together and see what kind of a solution that we can come up for this particular issue or for a particular problem. And therefore, having that growth mindset and instilling that growth mindset in our ecosystem becomes very critical. And the last point, which is again something that I spoke about as holistic marketeers, is all about how can marketeers be nurturing leaders. And what do I mean by that? Nurturing, not only nurturing themselves, but also nurturing their teams. And in my view, there are four aspects to it, which is all about managing energies, right? There is a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspect. So how do I take care of my body the right way so that I can stay fit through my various fitness routines, etc., which will help me to perform at the peak of my ability. One other thing is, how do I keep myself mentally agile? By reading up things, by having those conversations with the right people through the networking, so that I'm constantly keeping my mind refreshed in terms of what it is requiring, at the same time allowing it enough resting periods as well. The third part is about the heart or the emotional connect. How am I able to connect with the people I work with? Ultimately, we don't work with brand managers and plant managers, we work with human beings. So how am I able to do those connections well so that I can truly connect with people and fully leverage my emotional energy? And last but not the least is the spiritual energy, which is all to do with what kind of sense of purpose do I have for myself? What kind of a passion do I bring to my work? And what is that larger legacy that I would like to leave behind? So ability to understand and harness these energies in terms of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual becomes really important. And if the marketeers are able to sort of leverage these very well, they can become true leaders. So those are a few thoughts that I wanted to leave you with, which actually allows us to be holistic marketeers and in turn make our marketing function far more holistic, which will therefore lead to adding value to ourselves, to the organization, and to our consumers and customers. So without waiting further, go ahead and take the lead. Thank you.